What's going on, everybody? It's Divine, and today we're going to be going over early game money making tips. Now, one thing I do want to state right off the bat is there are going to be a few tips on this list that are only going to work for the first few weeks of the game being released. So that means if you're watching this video later on, some of these tips could be just kind of pointless, but hopefully you'll get a little bit of value out of this video no matter when you watch it. Now, I don't want to make this a super long video, so let's jump right in with our first tip, and we are going to be looking at rewards with town projects, main story quests, side quests, and faction missions. Alright, so as you can see on the screen right now, we have the main story missions and the side stories up here, and you can see that the rewards from doing these missions is actually pretty good. I'll scroll down here, and we can see that they range between about 50 and 150 gold for reward completion, which is actually pretty good because while you're doing the other two types of missions, the faction and the town projects, you can be doing these side stories or these main stories in these towns and getting a pretty good chunk of money out of them. Now, moving on to these faction missions and the town project, you're going to see the rewards just plummet. But one thing you really do want to do these missions for is the rewards for XP wise, but that's not what we're here for. We're here after the many, and faction and town projects are just not going to do it for money wise. So just be aware of this while you're questing. Make sure you're doing those main and side story quests. Alright, so moving on to tip number 2, and this one is going to be utilizing your marketing data to its full potential. And I'll show you guys here in just a second how to do that, but what I have here in my inventory is a couple different pickaxes and logging axes. I'm just kind of looking at what I have for sale, but we'll go to the trading post, and just take note in that top right it says Monarch's Bluff current trading post. You can switch that to look at different territories trading posts, but now I'm going to look at the current sell order, scroll all the way down, and we can see that there's a lot of common axes already for sale, but none uncommon. So what that means for me is I can sell these for a ton of money. Now I'm gonna upsell these at 300 gold, but just note that this is going to be for my town that I'm selling them in. So if maybe your prices are super low, I would switch that Monarch's Bluff current trading post, or wherever you currently are, to a different trading post and kind of seeing how their market is for the items that you're trying to sell. So just be aware of all the different markets because each territory has its own trading post and its own market. So these prices could be inflated in one city and just could be worth like hundreds of gold in others. So that's just a good thing to note. Alright, so continuing on from tip number 2 and moving into tip number 3, what we're going to be taking a look at, and I've stated in previous videos, is creating iron and steel tools. As you just saw in that previous clip, I was selling iron tools for around 300 gold, and they were selling great and crazily fast for the first 2 days of that open beta. So just make sure that you're trying to rush some of these tools if you are looking to make some easy money, because this is the perfect opportunity. But like I said at the beginning of the video, this is going to be one of those money makers that's only going to be viable for a little bit of time, because once everybody starts to get into the game and has some time in the game, these tools are probably going to plummet in value and they're not going to be worth nearly as much. I would expect them to be around 5 gold each, even for uncommon iron tools and things like that. So just be aware of that. So something similar to what I just did in tip number 3, I'm going to talk about in tip number 4, and that is going to be selling weapons early on. So this is going to be, again, another one of those money-making opportunities with limited time to make a good profit. But things that you might want to make for weapons-wise is going to be the great axe, the warhammer, and hatchets. Now, you can create some of these with perks if you have extra Azoth or maybe the materials to do that, and these are going to go for more money like you saw in my tip number 2 with the uncommon things. So I would say the value of weapons and trying to sell them early on is going to plummet even faster than tools, just because people are going to out level those weapons, but it is another way to make some early cash. And now moving on to tip number 5, it's going to be kind of the same structure, but now we're going to be talking about iron magical weapons. Now, these are the ones that are going to actually sell for probably as long as iron tools and stuff like that, because they are going to require an additional bit of leveling to get to, so you're going to actually need to get up your harvesting. And this is something that I would check out my harvesting guides on my channel. They kind of discuss like really good areas and kind of the different things you need to get your harvesting up. But during the beta, I was actually selling life staffs. Let's see, life staffs, fire staffs, also the ice gauntlet for, I would say, between 400 and 600 gold for the first 2 days. Then they did drop a little bit, but I would say life staffs are always going to sell the most, especially if you can try to create uncommons of those. You're going to have a great time, and you're going to have probably bank loads of money. You're going to be able to help your guild, you know, buy all sorts of territories. And like I said, I had almost 20k by just a few hours into the open beta, and that was kind of my big money maker. Was I got my harvesting up and I was mining iron as soon as possible, and I was just creating life staffs and then using the Azoth that I had to just make uncommon ones, and it was just a crazy money maker. All right, so on to tip number 6, and that's going to be looking out for certain items while you're out and about gathering that could be worth some really good money. And those items are going to include oil, which can be obtained from seeping stone. Then you have fish fillets and fish oil, which you get from fishing and salvaging the fish themselves. And then other things like herbs and vegetables. So you're going to find vegetables in those farms scattered throughout the wilderness. You're going to probably have to battle some enemies in there just to be able to harvest them, but it's all going to be worth it, because honestly, all of these items are going to be used for when you're actually trying to do town project boards. So if you kind of have like an abundance of this stuff, I would recommend selling it on the trading post. People are always going to be willing to just buy the items rather than go out and gather it themselves. And then one thing to note with the fishing side of things, if you do catch any salmon, do not salvage the salmon for fish fillets or fish oil. What you're going to want to do is just sell the salmon as is, because it is another very common town project that comes up, and people will buy those quite a bit. It's kind of crazy how much people buy these different items just so that they can complete the town projects to try to get to level 60 that much faster. Alright, so moving on to tip number 7, and that is going to be aware of what gems that you have in your inventory and storage shed. So don't be going around just using any gems you have just to get your crafting levels up or things like that. Gems that you're going to want to be aware of are going to be like things like the Carnelian gem, because that is used to increase threat and aggro on mobs for tanks so that they can use that in their gear. So that means that gems like this are probably going to be worth a pretty good amount of money, I would say, on the trading post, and they're probably more beneficial to you if you're not going to use them on the trading post rather than using them just to get some easy crafting levels. Alright, so for tip number 8, what we're going to be talking about is potions for money making. Now, during the first few days of playing, if you can get near some like streams or lakes, you're going to actually see briar. Now, if you pick these, you may get some briar buds, and what you can do with these buds is actually make weak mana potions, and they are going to be a great money maker, because these again are going to be required by the town project board missions that people are going to be willing to just buy rather than try to go ahead and try to make. But if you don't get to play much in the first few days, don't worry, because there are other items that we can sell that are potions as well. And that's going to be regeneration potions and health potions, and then the higher level like health potions and mana potions, because each one of these potions is going to have their own cooldown. So if you're someone that needs a lot of health regen, so you could actually have a regeneration potion and a health potion. You could take 2 potions at once to heal like a great deal rather than just one. And then other potions that you're going to want to be looking out for to create are going to be the encumbrance potions, which actually increase your weight limit for a short amount of time. And these are probably going to be great sellers, especially for people that are going to be doing a lot of harvest farming. They might have, you know, the big bags that they can hold a lot of stuff, but honestly, a lot of these people are going to be out there running around in circles or laps. They're going to find their perfect route. And these potions are probably going to be like a helpful bonus on top of that, so they can carry even more without having to go back to town right away. All right, so tip number 9 is going to be a little bit different here, and what that is going to be is farming for materials that can only be found in supply caches, crates, and stockpiles. Now, this is going to include things like sandpaper, solvents, flux. These are going to be those items that are going to be required to make higher level crafting materials, and again, they can only be found in these supply caches, crates, stockpiles out in the wild. So, if people aren't taking the time to pick these up, and they do respawn once an hour, so that is a good thing to note. I would say I think outside Windsward has like 30 plus crates, so that's like the perfect area, especially if you're like level 15 or higher. It's a great farming area out there to get these. And these are going to always sell just because they're always going to be required to get up your crafting levels. And it's going to be for each and every person. They're always going to have that. And if they're not taking the time to do this themselves, most of them are just going to go to the trading post and buy all these from other people. Now on to tip number 10, and that is going to be something that kind of relates to my earlier tips, and that's going to be creating steel tools early on. Now, one thing to note with the steel tools is, first of all, you have to be able to make steel, but to make the tools themselves is going to require a level 3 workshop. And when the game first comes out, many of these towns are not going to have them built up just yet. It will take them like a day or two, or maybe even more, depending on what town and what the the guild that takes over the territory decides that they want to upgrade. So there are different options to get these tier 3 workshops, and that is going to be going up to the town in Great Cleve called Cleves Point, or in Eden Grove at Valor Hold. Now, it's good to note that both of these outposts have workshops tier 3 and also an inn, so if you are able to make it up there day 1, you can set your teleport so that way you can kind of teleport back and forth. I would try to get a house before going up there. That way you can have a house that kind of allows you to go to one of your starting cities, and then have the inn that goes up there so that you can create those tools, and that way you can also teleport with your mats up there to create those steel tools. So out of the two, I would say that Great Cleave is probably an easier run at a lower level, but one thing to note with this is don't try crossing the bridge, because there's basically 2 paths to the city, and one of them tries to cross a bridge, and there is a ton of enemies that have a high range and a high aggro range as well on top of that. So it's pretty much a suicide mission no matter which way you look at it. As for the south side that kind of goes up the mountain, those enemies I would say are a lot easier to kite past. They're a little bit of the slower type, and you will run into a lot less range type monsters trying to get to that Cleves Point. Alright, so that's my 10 tips on how to make some early game money. And hopefully you guys found some tips that are going to help you when the game does come out. Now, if you like this video, think about giving it a like. And also, if you're not a subscriber already, it does help me out and lets you get notified if I do post a new video. So think about subscribing to the channel, and I will see you guys in the next video.